it's Christy, your host of Giving Tree Surrogacy's podcast from Bump to Bond. Today, we are joined with our guest, Amanda Corsaro Gomez, who is an attorney with the Fertility Law Center. And we'll be talking about the legal backbone of a surrogacy journey and things to consider when pursuing surrogacy as an intended parent, and to ensure that you have things like legal contracts in place, an escrow account for your funds, and a strong understanding of kind of what goes into a journey from a legal perspective. And that includes also working with a trusted agency to help guide you through that process. So thank you so much for joining, Amanda. I'm really excited to see you. We, fun fact, used to work together. And so it's been a little while, and I'm really excited to get to speak with you today because I've always been so impressed by your perspective and what you bring to the table in your role here in the fertility industry.
Thank you, Christy. I'm so happy to be here with you today. It's wonderful to see you again. I have missed you more than you know. And thank you for having me. Like, really, I'm really honored to be here with you today.
Great. I'm so excited, and I think I've missed you more. So, um, so kind of tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this industry, because that's always a really interesting piece of it that, is fascinating to people to know. How do you stumble upon this niche of the industry?
Literally, I stumbled upon it. I am a previous criminal defense attorney, and at the time I was in New Jersey, and I was moving to Massachusetts with my husband and my family, and um, I was looking for a job outside of criminal defense. And I was doing estate planning on the side, so I found a posting for an estate planning attorney, needed for intended parents. I had no idea what an intended parent was, so I was like, cool, let me apply. Click.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I'll find out, ask questions
yes,
later.
that's literally what I did. I was like, nah, I probably won't even get picked. Like at the time, like I was still waiting for like my Massachusetts bar results. I was licensed in two other states where they did not require licensing. So I was like, who knows if they'll even want me to come in for an interview. Um, I came in for an interview and they told me what they were needing, which was nothing to do with really estate planning. Um, so I was like, cool, this sounds
I'm
awesome.
in.
Yeah. Instead of breaking up families, I'm now going to be making them. So that sounds so awesome.
Right.
And I just literally stumbled upon it. And now here I am. I can't even tell you how many years later.
No. Enough years later. And when intended parents approach you, how I think my biggest question is like, how much background information do they need to know before reaching out to an attorney in this process? Where do they usually come from in their journey? What kind of stage are they at?
Yeah, I think that is it really depends on the intended parents. Like right now I have a client that literally calls me and just says, "Hi, I'm looking to be an intended parent and I have nowhere to start. Like help me. Where do I
Yeah.
start from here? Where do I go? How do I find an agency?" Really asking basic questions.
Mhm.
Um and some intended parents are already through the process and just saying, "I was matched with the surrogate in this state. You were recommended by a colleague or by the agency, and I'm really interested in working with you." It really depends. I recommend it more when an intended parent does not have any support or does not have an agency supporting them, to really start the conversation at that point, because you have a wealth of information that you can provide to them, and really providing them things where not just a contract information or parentage information, things like actually having a will. That's super important. A lot of intended parents don't have wills, and that's, very dangerous for not just them, but for their potential child and the surrogate. God forbid something happens to one or both of them during the process. And also, we
Right.
can just provide guidance and support on what we know about the agencies that they're potentially working with, things that they need to be concerned about, questions to ask. It's super important to ask questions, and people are so afraid to ask
Mhm.
questions. And
And they don't know where to even begin because they don't know what they don't know. So, how do
yes,
they formulate the right questions? And I mean, not that there are wrong questions either, but they don't even know where to get started or what questions to even come up with.
that is so true. Surrogates as well. Like, you have to be empowered to ask questions. And there's
Mhm.
no such thing as a dumb question. If it's a thought in your mind and you are unsure of it, ask. You need to trust the people you're working with. You need to trust the agency you're working with. You need clear and transparent answers. You need
Mhm.
to know all of the what ifs you have in your head are what ifs that they have either planned for, they've experienced, or if they haven't done either one of those things, they think about it as an agency.
Right.
All of
And
the
I
things,
think, yeah, if you're not working with an agency, you don't have someone even telling you that you should be asking questions. What questions do you have for me? If you don't have someone saying that and prompting that, then you think, okay, you just kind of silence what is maybe going on in your mind because you don't have that person encouraging you to ask questions and clarify.
absolutely, including like even starting with the IVF process. We
Yeah.
Most intended parents don't have an understanding of all of that that's going to go into it. Ask the questions. You
Ask the
need
questions.
to be able to feel comfortable with those that you're working with. And you can't
Mhm.
build that trust without talking to them, asking those questions, getting to know the agency or the clinic or whoever it is that you're working with, and kind
Yeah.
of going in being curious and being able to say, hey, I don't know this about you, or I'm just curious about the what ifs, you know, termination, a huge conversation for intended parents and surrogates. If you
Yeah.
don't know each other's views on things, it's super important that you flush those out before you go any further.
Yeah, that's so true. Like from such an early stage, there are a lot of topics that your attorney is going to bring up, your agency is going to bring up, and your clinic hopefully is also bringing those things up too. So there are a lot of different parties involved, and um, that's when you really need to lean on the experience of an agency or of your attorney or law firm that you're working with, and the clinic as well. um, each individual journey is different. Every circumstance is going to bring its own experience, but still, like the experience that you've seen countless journeys that have gone really well and that have not gone well, and that experience is so important to have in your corner. So um, yeah, I think, that are there things that you feel intended parents kind of underestimate going into this that they're
Yeah,
not exactly prepared for?
yeah. I 100% think that all people, when it comes to legal stuff and contracts and are kind of overwhelmed or kind of stricken with fear if it's not something that they deal with often or it's not a part of their daily life.
Yeah.
I think that's an immediate, like, oh my God, I have to talk to a lawyer. Oh my God, I have to, deal with this contract. Um, like lawyers are people too. We don't bite.
Mhm.
We're here to help you and we want to support you the best we can. We want to make this as easy and smooth as possible for you, and we want to take the quote unquote legalese and put it into plain English that you can understand what we're talking about and you can really have a full grasp and understanding of the rights and responsibilities of all the parties that you're working with. That includes the agency, that includes the surrogate, that includes your clinic. And I think that a different thing that attorneys experience in this field is we're very collaborative. We all work together very well. And it's not just from a legal perspective. I think the agencies and clinics also want to help support the parties through it. So we're able to kind of piece together all of the parts with you. Um, and I think that's a part of what people underestimate when it comes to this process is yes, we are all separate, but we are all working together to best support you. And really, we want to help you get the best result where you intended parents go home with that child.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I
I
also think another thing is like, it's hard when you start the process to not want to kind of disrupt the process where you just met your surrogate and you just, you fell in love with her as soon as you met her. And, asking questions sometimes intended parents, especially, say, oh my God, I don't want to upset my surrogate. And I know
Mhm.
surrogates feel the same way. I don't want to upset my intended parents.
Yeah.
And I need, I have 6 kids, whatever it is, I need extra childcare. Is that going to upset them? Is that going to be something that is going to, are they going to be uncomfortable with that?
Hmm.
And I
And
think,
another one is when each party maybe has the contract longer, or what the, if the intended parents are taking several weeks to review and maybe make some revisions to the draft of the contract before sending it back to the surrogate's attorney to review. um, I think that kind of causes people to feel anxious, or oh, did they not like what I was proposing additional
yeah,
childcare um, in the contract? Are they mad at me because they're taking so long with it? And just, I think, underestimating the amount of time that sometimes it does take, and that could be because of the attorney's schedule, that could be the intended parent's schedule, or the surrogate, like somebody is sick, or whatever. There's a several different reasons why that could take a while. But that is something that we typically hear is like, oh my gosh, I feel like they've had these changes for weeks and I haven't heard anything. Is something wrong?
yeah. I definitely think that it's helpful when attorneys just provide that little update and say, hey, opposing counsel, I just want to let you know our schedules just haven't aligned right now, and we're just sorry about the delay. Or my clients are out of the country on vacation. Whatever it is, open lines of
Hmm.
communication throughout this entire
Hmm.
process are super important, and transparency on where things stand. If there is an issue, it's also okay to say, hey, listen, they're really just focusing on this point here. Can you give me some context so we can flesh it out
Hmm.
with and give me
Yeah.
some background? Sometimes things like that just really help the process move forward so much smoother and easier.
And I think too that, if we can change the mindset that if, you're talking about your legal contract, that, coming from, I just met the surrogate, I love her, we don't want to upset her in any way. This is, the legal protection is, is a really respectful piece of the journey.
Mhm.
And so it's not a negative to focus on legal protections. It's a positive for both parties to be fully protected and feel really comfortable in the agreement that they're signing, because it is a really important part of the journey. So I think, if we can kind of dispel that, and that it's not a negative to have a lengthier contract, or something that has more detail, or whatever it is that's going to make you feel comfortable. That's a respectful part of the journey for me.
Absolutely. And I think even for intended parents that are lawyers or have dealt with contracts before, or surrogates that, vice versa, whatever, I think it's really important to realize these contracts are so much different than your standard, like, I am buying this piece of property. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's so much different. And there is so much thought that has to go into it, and so many things that you may not think about. Like, what happens if your surrogate travels at 32 weeks and she gets, maybe she's having some contractions and now she's on bed rest in that state? What happens then?
Hmm.
All of the things that you may not think about, those are things we talk about in the contracts. And that also goes for the surrogate. Like, what happens if her intended parents can't make it to delivery? The what ifs. It's not
Hmm.
a bad thing to have those conversations. It's a bad thing when you don't have them and it comes up,
Exactly.
and then you're now going, "Oh my god, what do I do?"
Scrambling. Yeah.
Yes.
And you don't have the time at that point to really talk through and think about, how you would want that handled. And everyone is scrambling and emotions are running really high. So
Yes.
planning and having that conversation up front, even if it is on topics that are a little more uncomfortable. You brought up termination. These may not be topics that everyone feels the most comfortable with talking about with someone they just met and felt like they really clicked with, and they don't want to bring down the mood, but it's just part of the process. And hopefully that makes everyone feel very settled and comfortable moving forward,
Yeah,
to have a plan in
absolutely.
place.
Yeah, I think, I grew up in a very old school type of household. Religion, politics, money, those conversations were never really openly had in my household. And I think some people come into that relationship also not wanting to have sensitive topic conversations. There are
Yeah.
certain ones that need to be had. That's it. You have to have them, rip the Band-Aid off,
Yeah.
because this is really just that time where if you don't rip the Band-Aid off, if you start bleeding later, you can't just patch it up. You have
Right.
to have those conversations in the beginning so you understand each other. You are all on the same page. There is no confusion that we are on the same page moving forward, because I want to make sure that I understand you and you understand me.
Hmm. That's such a good way to put it. Yeah. Um, So another part that comes into play in a journey is how funds are handled, and that has recently come up. Just to kind of acknowledge the story. I don't even know that I need to name names, but there was a recent article in the New York Times about an agency that held funds instead of the funds being in an escrow or IOLTA account. And so, can you explain the importance of an agency not holding those funds, and the protection that an escrow account provides when money is being exchanged in a journey? How do intended parents pay their surrogate this compensation that she receives, and um, how does everyone feel like those are protected throughout a journey?
Yeah. So escrow is definitely crucial in any part of this process, and being held by a third party is super important. And it's not important just for protection purposes. It also kind of keeps the peace between the parties. There's no, well, you did this because you were holding funds, or you did that because, she's your surrogate and you found her for me. There's no kind of one party has this superior feeling. When a third party is holding escrow, it's this neutral party that takes away the stress that both sides may feel. And there's no one that can sit here and say, you did this or you did that, because this
Right.
third party is making the determination based on the contract. And that
Mhm.
escrow holder is making sure that things are paid on time. They're making sure your surrogate is receiving her compensation, her expenses, her medical bills.
Medical bills.
It's very important that those things are paid on time. And we
Mhm.
also want to make sure that this person is also protecting, or agency is protecting, the intended parent's investment. And it kind of removes that awkward conversation. I'm not
Mhm.
calling my surrogate and saying, hey, surrogate, I didn't get your bill this month, so I can't pay it,
Right.
because the surrogate's submitting it directly to that escrow agency.
Yeah.
Um, and it really removes that money conversation during the pregnancy, when you really should be focusing on, building that relationship with your surrogate even more, making sure you're
Mhm.
participating in that pregnancy, and creating this like smooth, trustful relationship where you're all kind of able to call each other and just have normal conversations, versus saying, oh, you didn't pay my bill, or this medical bill didn't get paid. Also,
Right.
escrow agencies are so much better at looking at the bill and saying, oh, they didn't apply insurance, or they're rejecting this bill because they say she can't be, she can't use her insurance. We have an approval of her insurance. What's going on here? Maybe
Mhm.
we need to get another party involved, like an insurance agency involved, to make sure that insurance company knows where things stand, and if something has to be done, they can do it at that point. Um, this neutral third.
They're
Sorry.
also they're able to follow the contract and the way that it's written and
Mhm.
directs them to make all of these moves. You know, what exactly is being paid, how much is being paid. So there's no question, like you said, going back and forth, and saying, well, I don't remember agreeing to that number or something like that. Like, it's in the contract, and this is already been reviewed by both parties and agreed and signed. And so they kind of take that part out of it too, and can just refer back to the contract and follow it.
Yeah. And if honestly, escrow agencies ever have questions, I promise you they're sending an email to both attorneys and saying, hey, this is what came up. This is what we're reading. Can you please let us know if you both are on the same page? If there is
Mhm.
a dispute, we will work it out. Intended parents and surrogates will hear from their respective attorneys and we will be able to figure out the way moving forward. And again, it takes away that stress from you calling
Mhm.
up the opposing party and saying, I saw you submitted for this bill and it's more than what I was expecting. It takes that away. It puts the
Yeah.
onus on the professionals to sort through and figure out the best way moving forward.
Mhm. Because as much as the agency, acts as a supportive, um, network for the intended parents and the surrogate for a journey, the attorneys do too. They also want to see you succeed. And I know that, I've talked with you and other attorneys throughout this process, and your clients matter to you, and you're emotionally invested in this as well. And so you want to see them succeed. You don't want there to be issues throughout. And so I think that kind of gets lost, or people don't really realize that going into it. They think like the attorney is just so factual and is just concerned about the language of the contract, and they're not um as emotionally invested. And while I'm not saying that you're a huge softie, or
Right. I'm
anything, like
happy.
you're in over your head with emotions or something like that. It's just that you guys are people too, and you want to see clients succeed and not struggle throughout the journey. And so that's what the contract does,
Mhm.
to hopefully provide that stability for the journey. But if things come up, whether it's the agency reaching out to say, hey, we need some clarity on this, or something has changed and we may need an amendment, like I need you to contact the client, they're asking questions that I can't answer. Those things come up, and that's when the agency will reach out to the attorney, or the surrogate's attorney. So that does happen, and that's okay. So you're still available even after all of this gets started, whether questions come up from the third party, like escrow holder or the agency or whoever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said, like attorneys are people too. I know as
Yeah.
soon as people say, "Oh my God, I have to go speak to an attorney," they kind of get that bubbly tummy, as I call it. I promise we don't bite. And I
Yes.
promise, like, getting the text messages where or the emails that say, "Hey, just want to let you know we delivered," and getting a picture, I promise makes my day. And any attorney that is in this area will tell you the same thing. Like, that makes my day. May it be
Yeah.
the surrogate that I represent or the intended parent. Um, and I can tell you, I have
Yeah.
clients that I helped years ago that send updates. I have clients that I've become that have literally become like family, like came to my wedding, came to my like join me at all of my big family events. Um, their son calls me Aunt Amanda and calls my husband Uncle Cliff. So like that, I promise, like
It's so cool.
we love seeing you all succeed. And we just want to be here to be a cheerleader and help you get to that finish line. Even if our
Yeah.
goal is, yes, legal protection, of course, but our goal here is to support you on this journey.
Mhm. Yeah, and to see your work, you know, come full circle at the end, and get a baby picture. Sometimes you would be contacted before, the case manager, because of, at the hospital, they think, okay, I need to tell my attorney, like, now what for legal work and everything else. And so sometimes you would send the birth announcement before the rest of us knew that there was a delivery. So it's
That
such
is
an
very true.
exciting, just kind of full circle moment. And you're like, yep, this baby was born. Here are the details. And then we're reaching out to the surrogate, like, oh my gosh, you just had a baby. Um, so yeah, you are really involved, throughout the process and available throughout, not just in the beginning phase of everything. And so it's so sweet to hear that, even the Aunt Amanda and Uncle Cliff and like being at the wedding and stuff. It's so cute. And something that still just blows me away about this industry is just, I've talked several episodes, it comes up of just the ripple effect that these journeys have on people's lives in such a positive way.
Mhm.
From the surrogates, children learning, what makes a family and how you can help people, and even from the attorneys and um, having those connections with people. And just at the end of the day, we're all just humans having a human experience, and such a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I have a colleague that actually had her 2 children through surrogacy, and during her child's, school time where they were reading stories, she brought a book on surrogacy and read it to her child's
Oh
class.
my gosh.
And it just
Oh,
things like that just
yeah.
show how much anybody involved in this industry really just different breeds of people, really
Yeah.
different breeds of people. Um,
Hmm. It really is. It really attracts the most genuine, caring people that I've really ever met. And so it really gets us through difficult times and all the challenges. It just makes it all worth it.
Yeah, and I think that goes for anybody, any agency, and I don't mean just surrogacy or an egg donation agency, escrow agency, anybody really involved in that. The people working there want to see everybody succeed, and I
Mhm.
think that's really important going into this. It is not a I'm out for myself type of field and industry. We really
Yeah.
are very cooperative and we have great like camaraderie between all of us
Mhm.
attorneys, agencies, escrows, we all work together very well. And I think that's really important knowing going into this because you can ask a question and you're going to get an honest opinion from the person you're asking. And we all know each other. Even though
Yeah.
this is a very big industry, we all know each other. It's small
Mhm.
enough that we all know each other as well and we know who's going to work best with people just based on personality, so it's important to ask those
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, and I mean, even, us sitting here and talking, like we worked together previously, now we work at different places, and it's, you're still someone that I reach out to from time to time and touch base with and check in on, um and I have that relationship with other people that I've crossed paths with specifically in this industry.
Mhm.
Because like you said, there are a lot of agencies out there, a lot of law firms out there, clinics, and one constant is that everyone genuinely just wants people to receive the help that they're seeking out, and have the best fit for whatever that looks like that they need.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely
so
agree
yeah,
with that.
that's a really cool point. um, so speaking of that in different agencies, when clients come to you and they're debating, that maybe they haven't selected an agency or they're debating, do I use an agency or not? How do you respond to that? And kind of what's your take on agency versus independent journey? What's your response?
I think it's very difficult to give like a blanket statement to that
Hmm.
because independent journeys work for some that are able to work it. You
Yeah.
have to be able to have those difficult conversations and be able to manage your emotions appropriately.
Hmm.
I am a big proponent of agencies because they do that for you. They are
Yeah.
taking away the what ifs and not having somebody to kind of answer those questions for you. I can't manage local monitoring for you as your attorney. Most
Right.
people have no idea what to do with local monitoring, especially if their
Hmm.
surrogate is 10 states away from their IVF clinic. They're not going to
Right.
have any idea how to figure that out. And that's really important to understand. Agencies are not there just for matching, they're there for coordination, they're there for support. They're there to connect with the hospital, do hospital prep, making sure that everybody knows what happens when.
Mm.
And when you're doing an independent journey, if you haven't been through this previously, doing it by yourself is going to be very overwhelming, especially if you just found this person on the street, on Facebook, on social media, whatever it was. There might not be a screening process that you're going through. Maybe you didn't run a background check. Maybe your clinic did a mental health screening, but it wasn't as thorough as it should be. Maybe there's things that you didn't realize about this person. And that also goes for a surrogate that finds intended parents online.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there are things that have to get done, especially when you're doing it independently. Running that background check is super important. Making sure you're checking all of those boxes and you all understand anything that could happen, how your reaction is going to be, and how you're going to tackle it together.
Hmm.
Because even if you are opposing parties, once the surrogate's pregnant, you are in it together. She is
Hmm.
pregnant with your child for intended parents, and the surrogate is pregnant with their child. So she needs to work with them and they need to work with her to figure it out. And having that agency to lean on is super important. So independent can work if you are the type of person that can work it. And also, if you are the type of person that's going to check all the boxes, making sure everything is getting done. I think it's really important that you do consult with an agency, a lawyer, and professionals in this industry if you are going to go independent.
Hmm. And I think too, just having a neutral party that
Hmm.
an agency can provide to you, um, because there are plenty of times where, it's an emotional journey. Everyone is coming from a different background and has different needs and wants out of this journey, and so sometimes you just need to have a conversation with someone that can be very neutral and tell you, are you being reasonable here or not? You have to be really open um, to compromise in a journey. There's a lot of compromise, and um, agencies are here to help both parties get as close to what they want out of a journey when they first started as possible. And sometimes that doesn't always look like what you thought it would be when you first started. And, things come up, and how you work through that is, can sometimes be dependent on having that neutral voice to say, like, this may be something that we let go, or this may be something that you need to talk directly with the intended parents about. And here's how I would encourage you to approach that conversation, and just advice sometimes, and from for both parties, because they don't typically know each other. Sometimes it's, my aunt or my friend is going to carry for us, or, certain circumstances like that. But typically they don't know each other. And so how do you communicate with someone you don't know? And that comes from a very different walk of life than you.
Hmm.
So I think, that can sound like something that may not be worth the cost of an agency, but it really is invaluable, I think. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Because life still does happen outside the surrogacy.
right.
There are sickness, death, job loss, moving, things like that that still happen that will impact the surrogacy and will
Hmm.
impact the process. And how you deal with things and deal with life will change during the process because you also have these other parties that are a part of your everyday life. Even if
Yeah.
you're not talking on a daily basis, things that impact your life will impact the surrogate's life or the intended parent's life. And you
Hmm.
just have to make sure you're having those open lines of communication and appropriately talking about it. Maybe there's a diagnosis of a terminal illness during the process for an intended parent. How do you broach that subject with the surrogate?
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be bad news. It could be phenomenal news, like an oopsie pregnancy for an intended parent that they've been trying for years to
They
get
never
pregnant
knew. Yeah.
and
That
they
they could.
couldn't, and now they are. And how to not take away from the surrogate's pregnancy and kind of add that joy to it, have that conversation.
Yeah.
And, people don't think about the everyday life things that could impact the process.
Hmm.
And really having those conversations sometimes is actually harder than talking about the things going with the surrogacy because you're being vulnerable about a part of your life that you kind of thought you can disconnect, and you
Yeah.
can't. You cannot disconnect the rest of your life from this process.
Yeah. And like you said, it's not always bad things, but the way that it impacts a journey could cause some anxieties or fears for the other party, like a pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy of an intended parent. And then the surrogate feeling like, well, I'm happy for them, but I'm carrying a baby for them. And I've been pursuing this for how long? And so she's going to digest that in a different way. And, or, maybe the surrogate landed her dream job and now her insurance is going to change though, and
Mhm.
her hours are going to change, and how her intended parents are going to receive that exciting news for her, but for them that brings up a lot of questions. So having someone to work through those things, and agencies have typically kind of seen it all. I'm not saying that things don't happen that we're like, well, this is a first, because there are definitely still always going to be firsts, but
Yeah.
the experience that they have under their belt, is just really important to have, I think, because of all those circumstances that they've worked through before.
Yeah, I think you bring up
Yeah.
some great points about even positive changes can really kind of throw somebody for a loop. So it's important to have somebody to lean on that you trust.
Yeah. Are there other things um, that you feel like clients come to you about that are kind of like frequently asked questions um, in a journey?
Um, I would say a lot of the frequently asked questions I get are usually, I call them the Hallmark movies because they're the things that uh, er, industries don't actually see, like the surrogate running off with the child, uh,
Yeah,
the surrogate being pregnant with her own child, and also the intended parent's child. Things like that
at the
don't
same
actually.
time. Yeah,
Yes. Um, but those are like I call them my Hallmark questions because they do come
yeah,
up. Or that, we don't need escrow, we don't need an agency. Those are really the trying to explain why things are important or why things don't happen. Um, a lot of my clients will tell you, I tell them stay off of like Hallmark movie channel. I found out that's also a
yeah.
new thing, a Hallmark channel. Sorry, I live
Yeah.
under don't Google all of like the crazy things that happen in surrogacy, things like that,
Mhm,
because those are meant to sensationalize certain things. They
mhm.
do not talk about the actual process. It is extremely rare you're going to hear about a surrogate that is pregnant with her own child and also the intended parent's child at the same time. That is
Yeah.
extremely rare. I think I've seen it once happen in my entire career.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
and
that
that,
she'll keep the baby. I think a lot of, we hear that concern a lot. Like, how do I know that the surrogate's not going to want to keep my baby?
yeah, I
I think
think
that's a Hallmark movie or Lifetime movie situation too, because that's
yeah,
I just do not see that at all.
and how do we know that's not going to happen? I promise Somebody is not going to come in with the intention of, oh my God, I'm coming in to have these people have their child impregnate me, and now I'm going to run off with this baby.
Right.
First off, there's medical screening, mental health screening. There is plenty of other people involved before that's going to happen. If
Mhm.
there are any red flags, you are going to know about it.
Mhm.
She's going through a thorough mental health exam before she's pregnant.
Yeah.
So that's
And
the
that,
first.
I mean, that highlights the importance of all of these screenings taking place and why
Oh
they
yeah.
do take place so that um, we're protecting everyone involved. So we're preventing those things from happening in the off chance that a Lifetime movie becomes reality in some
Yeah.
weird universe.
Yeah, and I think it's like really important to also know like the reason why you're hiring agencies, attorneys, professionals in this process is to make sure those things don't happen. That is why we're here. We are here to
Yeah.
protect all the parties involved and to make sure we all understand each
Mhm.
other moving forward.
Are there different protections that come into place when we're talking about domestic intended parents versus international intended parents? Are they the same types of protection, or is there a really clear difference?
With international intended parents, it's extremely important that all parties involved are on the same page. So their attorney in their home country, their US based attorney, their agency, if their once parentage is getting involved prior to matching, all parties have to be heavily involved because as a US attorney, I cannot tell you what's going to happen in another country. I don't practice there. And
Right.
just like the attorneys that don't practice in the US can't tell us what's going to happen here, we have to be able to have clear understanding of what is needed and when. Certain countries require certain things at certain times. They require, maybe certain countries require adoptions. Those are things we don't make as an attorney. I don't make those determinations because I want your home country attorney to tell me what is needed and when. We are here to support you from a US based perspective. We need their support from an international perspective. And your agency is also going to be there to make sure that they're matching you with the appropriate surrogate, that the surrogate that you're matched with can get the legal things needed in that state that are
Mhm.
going to make sure from your country's perspective you can get your child home. Also, right now with citizenship things in this country, what we want to make sure that we know what is going to happen. God forbid, you know, there is birthright citizenships issues that arise with surrogacy and the children that are born via surrogacy. We want to make
Mhm.
sure that those protections are involved before it happens, that there is
Yeah.
a backup plan to the plan.
And so you are in contact with clients, like intended parents. I don't know. Do you also have clients that are surrogates, or do
Yes.
you only represent? Okay, so you have surrogate clients, intended parent clients. You're also in contact with um, escrow, like a third party, any kind of escrow manager, agencies,
Hmm.
other parties, at clinics too. Like, I feel like you're just kind of this hub where everyone kind of goes to you. And so you have so many different contacts uh, during a journey.
Yeah. Sometimes you're talking to everybody because you're keeping different parties up to date on certain types of things. Sometimes, if there is not an agency involved, you're in direct communication with the IVF clinic because they're telling you, medical clearance was received, or they're asking you where updates stand from the contracts perspective
Mhm.
because they're trying to plan a transfer. Or, if something arises during medical screening, sometimes IPs are like, what does this mean? How do we, she needs a polyp removed. Who pays for this? How do we talk about this?
Right.
So we're working through those types of questions with the intended parents or from a surrogate perspective, sometimes with our surrogate clients. It really depends on who we're representing at that point. Um,
Mhm.
and escrow, is reaching out if they have any questions during the process on how things are actually supposed to be distributed. Maybe there's a misunderstanding, or maybe that the contract isn't clear enough for them and they need some clarification.
Hmm.
Um, and we all
And
just have to be on the same page, and again, transparent communication.
and then local council as well, and or international, like that
Mhm.
would be their local council. But also, the when we say local council, we mean in the surrogate's state. There are attorneys that you at what point in the journey do you contact them? It's kind of earlier on, not just at delivery or after delivery. You're reaching out and saying, okay, here's this delivery that happened. So there's a lot of prep work that even goes into um, an upcoming delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. We make sure that our clients have clear expectations that, if a surrogate is pregnant, she's reaching out to her attorney and saying, "Hey, just want to let you know, I just had a successful transfer and I had a successful ultrasound," whatever it is, and keeping the the attorneys up to date to make sure that they're clear with due dates and anything that's expected. So there's no, "Hey, just letting you know, my surrogate's delivering tomorrow. So what am I supposed to do at the hospital?" And then you're going, I needed to know this like several months ago so I could have done the prep work and the legal work that
Right.
we now are scrambling, trying to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Hmm.
Um, so again, being on top of things is super important, and making sure that you're keeping parties up to date is super important. That's also, agencies are great with just saying, "Hey, giving you guys a heads up here, they had a successful transfer. We'll be letting you know when we have the due date after the confirmation of pregnancy ultrasound." So that's really why agencies are also super important, because they're prompting the parties to actually get things done at the appropriate times.
Yeah, it's like they know all the trigger points of like, okay, the now that we've reached this milestone, that's that triggers the next step of this. So
Yes.
um otherwise you're just kind of like, I could see where in an independent journey where you would reach potential milestones, and then, I mean, for me, I feel like it would be so overwhelming. Like you just kind of get wrapped up in the moment, and then you're like, okay, well, now what? And then all of a sudden, 6 months has gone by and
Yes.
you're approaching delivery and things like that. So, um, yeah, I think I'm just a planner. And so I think that all of those things are very appealing to me. Like you said, it kind of depends on the person and their background and what they feel comfortable with. Um, but all of these things, I think, just kind of allow for people to kind of be more present in the moment, because a journey, it's like it can be a 2 year long process, sometimes more, depending on the clients and the situations that happen. But other times that can go by so fast, and then it's over, you're done.
Yeah. Things that people don't think about are like, even post birth, what happens? How do
Yeah.
I get a birth certificate? For new parents, that sometimes they don't think to even have that conversation of like, "Oh my god, I need a birth certificate. Now what do I do?"
Right.
Um, you know, where that's where the agency and the attorneys are really helpful. Or,
Hmm.
"I have to hop on a plane to get home. I didn't think about this. Do I
Yeah,
need
like, does my
documentation?"
baby need a ticket? Or
Yeah,
like, what about the car seat? Like, how do I transport the baby? Like, I'm
yeah,
out of
there's
state.
so many things. And yes, there are other professionals, hospitals, and things involved that can provide this guidance and support as well. And uh, most hospitals aren't saying you need a car seat to be discharged. We will not discharge your child without that car seat.
Right.
Also, this is where you go to pick up a birth certificate. If you live out of state, this is how you can order it online. They're not going
Mhm.
through those types of things with you, which is again where you rely on your agency and your attorney to kind of help guide and support you.
Mhm.
And if honestly, if there's needed anything post birth, because maybe you're in a state that has a post birth process, and that's what happens with that post birth process. Really making sure you're kind of putting the bow on the entire package now that baby is born.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, are there any last thoughts on things that you would recommend if someone is getting started on considering surrogacy in general and they don't know where to start? What's your recommendation? Where's their starting point?
My recommendation is ask questions.
Mhm.
Whoever you are starting with, may it be your clinic, may it be an agency, may it be an attorney, ask questions. You have to be able to feel comfortable asking those questions, feel empowered to ask them, and you have to trust whoever you're working with. I am a big fan of trusting my gut, and I tell all of my clients, if your gut is giving you a bad feeling, trust it,
Yeah.
because there is a reason why it's giving you those bad feelings. You're investing a lot of time if you're a surrogate or intended parent. If you're an intended parent, you're investing a ton of money into this process. And you have to be able to trust that person. And you want to make sure that they have clear responses to all of your questions. You know your rights and responsibilities, and you know their rights and responsibilities. And you want to make sure that there's clear guidelines set up for the parties that are involved.
Yeah.
It's also important to ask, if you are going to work with an agency or an attorney or an escrow company, that you're asking the what ifs. What happens if the company goes out of business? What happens if there's impropriety and company funds go missing? Are we insured and bonded? You have a right to ask these questions as an intended parent or as a surrogate. You have a
Mhm.
right to say, I want to make sure this escrow company that is holding my intended parents' funds is insured and bonded, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm pregnant and now my intended parents have to come up with a ton of money. That might not be a possibility for everybody.
Yeah.
And you want clear answers. You want transparency. And it is okay if they say, we don't have that answer right this second. And you brought up a great point. We're going to go back and talk to our team and we will get back to you. That is absolutely okay for an
Mhm.
agency to say to you, but you want that answer. Trust your gut. Make sure you trust who you're working with, and be empowered to ask questions.
I love that. That's so incredibly important and such fantastic advice. And I hope that people really do listen to that advice and feel comfortable, or just feel comfortable enough in the uncomfortable for them, because we recognize that, it's not natural for everyone to ask questions. They have some hesitations to do that for some reason.
Yeah.
And so it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. You're not being a bother. And it's incredibly important to listen to your gut and to get answers. And I appreciate that you said the part of, if you ask someone that doesn't know the answer, that doesn't necessarily raise a red flag. Their response, though, should be, I don't know that answer, because they're not going to just come up with something that's not true. And we would much rather hear that from
Mhm.
someone, that I don't know this answer, but I am going to find it out and get back with you, or connect you to the right person. And so I can really appreciate that too, of someone just being honest that they don't have the answer and they're going to find it.
Yeah.
This QR code here, if you are interested in using Giving Tree Surrogacy as your agency to support you on a journey like this. We are here and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have. And we hope to get the opportunity to speak with you. And thank you so much to Amanda from the Fertility Law Center for joining us today and giving such invaluable advice. And I can really appreciate your perspective on journeys, because um, it's comforting, I think, to work with an attorney like you that has the experience and the knowledge, and you don't have any fears in telling people things that you know that they need to hear, whether sometimes that can be uncomfortable for people, because at the end of the day, they need truthful answers. And you've always been that attorney that I can lean on to hear that type of advice of like, this may be difficult to say because there are a lot of emotions involved in journeys, and sometimes you have to say things that people don't necessarily want to hear, but they need to hear it. So
Absolutely.
um, thank you again for joining, and I
Thank
appreciate
you
you
for
so
having me.
much.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it just as thought-provoking.